Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Covenant Eyes podcast. So glad to be with you today. We're going to have a great time, and I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Clark. I'm joined by the fabulous Karen Potter. Hi, Karen. How are you?
I'm great, Brandon. I don't know about fabulous, but you know what? I'm doing pretty good today. The sun is out finally in Michigan, and I am so excited because we finally get to open the pool up soon. It's going to be warm if we get in. So,
That's great. You know,
yes.
I'm really excited for our guest today. I stumbled upon him a couple of years ago. Nobody got hurt in the incident, so don't worry about that. Uh, but no, I Michael Jr. is a guy I've been watching because I love comedy, and I really enjoy being able to share comedy with my family, and so there's so much, material content and media out there that is just not family friendly. And so I'm really excited, Karen, to be able to bring this episode to our listeners today, because I think, obviously we talk a lot about pornography and being intentional as parents in working with our kids and having conversations with our kids. But another intentional thing we need to do is make sure that we're exposing our kids to good and wholesome things. And so that's why I'm really
Yeah.
excited to have Michael Jr. on to talk about this, because this is something that parents can bring into their own home, especially with comedy. There's a lot of comedians out there, and they're not always family appropriate. So we get to share this with our listeners today.
Awesome. Well, I will go ahead and introduce today's guest. Michael, we are just honored to have you join us. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what you've been working on? I know you stay pretty busy and you've got some upcoming shows. You're going to be in Michigan this week. I'm super excited about
hmm
that. Share with our listeners what you've been working on recently.
I just had to cut some trees in the backyard. So yeah, that's about it, really.
Nice.
No,
Being busy.
we're working on we're probably 90% done to launch in September called Funny How Marriage Works. That helps people. It uses funny to help people understand marriage. And we already released one called Funny How Life Works. It allows people to it basically uses funny to help people better understand life and what their purpose is. Because I get to do comedy, but comedy is not the destination; it's just the vehicle. So I'm excited about that. We released a book as well that came out called "Funny How Life Works," and then able to do a couple movies, and then I'm on tour doing stand up all over the place as well. So it's a blast.
I bet. Speaking of travel, how do you manage? You have a family. So how do you keep,
Mhm.
the marriage, strong and the kids happy and everybody comfortable and doing well? How do you manage that?
I don't know. I don't pay attention to that stuff. I just do whatever feels good. I My priorities are, and the gappage between this list is important. My priorities are God, family, business. That's pretty much how I do it. Like, like just to stay aware of that. Like all of that other stuff, even the business really could last. I could have put more of a gap between there, but because a lot of people are just listening, I don't want them testing their audio. Like, hey, what happened? This thing break up. Like really, those are my priorities, and it's significant in a big, big way. So I don't have to. I don't have to travel. I don't have to do any shows. If for some reason my family needs me, I just don't. So in fact, I check with my family on a pretty regular basis just to find out how I'm doing as far as being available to them. That's a big deal for me. A really big deal. So
I think that's really great. And one of the things that I appreciate about your comedy, when you talk about comedy and when you share comedy with others, is how you mentioned it being the vehicle you use. And one of the themes you have in it is helping people live a better life. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that's so important to you?
yeah, so it's kind of like I think one of the like we do this in the courses, for example. Um, so let's say when you were in the third grade, how tall are you, by the way?
5'9".
5'9". So let's say when you were in the third grade, you got beat up. You got beat up by a
How'd you
first
know?
grader.
How'd you know?
Yeah, it was a first grader to beat you up. Her name was Stephanie. Like she just beat you up, right? And, let's say that what your brain does in that moment is it starts to search for anything that is most unique about that moment, so it can prevent you from and what it would do, it would probably find something like, let's say that Stephanie had a crooked tooth. Only thing the brain is going to look out for next time around is a crooked tooth. So now let's say you're a grown man, which you are. And then you have a coworker who's great. You meet them over via email, everything seems perfect. And then you meet them face to face and they got a crooked tooth. And you won't be able to articulate it. But your brain is telling you, yo, be careful, stay away from this person. And you'll say something like, I don't know what it is about that person. There's something I don't like. I can't put my finger on it. Well, what you have is a negative neural association attached to when you got beat up. So now you don't like the person as much. So with comedy, the way we use it, both in the Funny How Life Works course and the marriage stuff, is we use comedy and attach a positive neural association to to the information of, hey, this is your purpose. So then even after you're done watching a course or reading a book or looking at any of the Michael Jr. stuff, you're attracted to more information about what your purpose is because we attach the pleasure of comedy to it. I know that was a little deeper than I probably should have went on this. But anyway,
That's awesome.
that's what we do. That's really what we really like to do. That's how I like to utilize comedy, because I could make a bunch of people laugh. And I did that for years. But if all we do is laugh, like, what do we really do? I want people to be able to grow and actually have a better life as me on stage. So if I can do that, now I've done something. That's pretty awesome.
That's kind of awesome. You're using neuroscience and, to really help people use comedy as a
Yeah.
vehicle to find joy and meaning. And
Yeah.
like, that's awesome. I love that. That's really great. Um,
Yeah.
in a world, we live in this world where everything is so serious. I think we're always, bickering on social media about this and that and politics and stances and on this issue and that issue. How do you use comedy to kind of bridge that? Do you find that that's something that we can all kind of share in common and set aside our differences and kind of come together on? Or how does that work?
Yeah. So I would use comedy, like if I was in front of an audience, I would use comedy to get everybody on the same page. But then I would help people understand that everyone has a problem, right? But what I mean is, everyone has a problem, but most people don't know what their problem is. And here's what I mean. We all have a problem that we're here to solve. For example, the problem I'm here to solve is that there's a lot of people who don't understand what your purpose is. And I get to help people understand their purpose. That's the problem I'm called to solve. So I know what my problem is and I know what I'm here to solve. But most people don't know what their problem is. So they'll just jump on any problem that shows up. And instead, to use your words, they'll start to bicker about it, or they'll complain that other people aren't taking care of the problem that they should be taking care of. So they're basically just talking heads as opposed to actually taking action. So I just shed a little bit of light on that and say, hey, maybe you should know what your problem is so you can fix your problem versus focusing on other problems. Hopefully people caught on to
I
that.
like
So
that.
that's what we're literally here to make things better for other people.
Nice.
Literally,
It's kind of a nicer way of stay in your lane, kind of know where you need to play. Like, don't get into problems that aren't
Exactly.
yours to solve. I love it. I love it.
Exactly. Oh, thanks.
What's really interesting too is when you focus on family and you focus on marriage and you focus on God and you put them in their proper orders, it really allows you to go out on mission. When you're living mission and you're getting to do something that you love. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So piggybacking back off the problem issue. So if you have a problem, and let's say you attach a question to the problem. And then let's say somebody's problem is there's a lot of there's too many single moms. Like dads aren't stepping up. Let's say that's their problem. My problem, dads need to know how to step up as dads. Well, as soon as you form that into a question and you say something like, how can I help dads be better dads? You'll be amazed at the opportunities that you see, because your brain does not like an unanswered question. It just doesn't. It will search for it. So all your listeners right now, if I ask you this question, how much red is in the room where you are. Like how many red items are in the room, actual things that are red. So right now, even if you don't try, you're going to start to notice some red stuff around. Even if you don't try, you'll notice it. But the scary part is because you're noticing the red, there's some other colors that you're not even noticing. So it's really cool because you can zoom in on it. So if you understand your problem and then you can attach the right questions to solve that problem, your brain will start to help you solve the problem in the backdrop if you know how to properly use it. And if there happens to be some comedy involved as well, now you're adding pleasure to it, and it's like adding nitro to the scenario so you can really get where you're supposed to go. I'm not a rapper, but all of that did kind of flow. I'm just going to throw that out there.
That's great. Yeah. I like I said, I stumbled across your comedy a couple of years ago and have loved sharing it with many others because I love how, you'll go to churches and you'll share comedy at churches and, you'll go to all these different venues and being able to share what you have is such a gift to just not only our church, but everybody who encounters your comedy because you come at it from such a different perspective. Like you said, it's not just about getting a laugh, it's about bringing people to the next level. And I wonder if you can just further just talk about how ultimately, whether you say it or not, becoming a better person and doing better in our lives is leading us closer to God.
Yeah, absolutely. That was too short a response, probably. You want me to
Yeah, maybe a
go
little
a little
longer.
more?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, yeah, absolutely. You're right. Still too short. Still too short. Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool.
No, that's great.
Yeah. No, I think it's all about. I think it is true. I mean, ultimately, like some people are in their car watching right now, and some people are just maybe sitting in a chair at their house or sitting on a couch. But there's not an item wherever you are right now. There's not an item in the room that did not start with a problem. But just think about that. Like if you're sitting on a bed right now listening to this podcast, you're on the bed because at some point somebody was sleeping on the ground. It's like there's gotta be a better way to this. I'm digging out little holes for my hip. Like this is miserable. I don't want to sleep on the ground. What if we put some cotton together? And they probably had black people get the cotton because it was back in the day. I'm making stuff up as I go. Anyway, but somebody eventually came up with the idea of the bed. But it started with the problem. The same exact thing is true for us. Like when God decided to he knew there was going to be some problems on the earth. So he decided, hey, I'm going to make Mark, Thomas, Rebecca, and they're going to solve this problem. If they stay focused, if they keep their eye on me, I can help them find the true fulfillment by solving the problem that I have them here for. Like it's a design, like for real, like a design. And the joy we get from doing that is just unmeasurable. But I feel like we also get some talents to help solve that problem. And sometimes the talent is shiny and nice and fun and it draws a lot of attention from other people. And then we take that talent and not use it what its original intent was for. So if you're not using it for its original intent, it becomes abuse. Abuse just means to use something for something other than what it's used for. For example, sex, right? Like you guys know something about that stuff, right? Like there was an original intent for it, but then to not use it properly is abuse. So even this is something that Miles Monroe said a while ago, but we are supposed to have dominion over the plant and the animals. But this is just an example. Some people have it flipped where the plants, for example, actually have dominion over them, meaning you should have control of the plant, but yet you're allowing a a marijuana leaf to tell you where to spend your money. So it's almost flipped. But if we could just become aware that that flip is taking place and then we're actually called to have dominion, then boom, that's where the power is located. We really don't.
Preach it. That's great. That's really good. I was,
Well,
Michael, I was reading an article that you did, and I forgive me, I forget the site that I was reading this on, but you were talking
yeah,
about
I
just
forgot
kind of,
too. So it's
I know, right? You do so many. I mean, it's hard to keep track. I'm a big
no, I've only
fan.
done two. I've only done two.
Oh, only two, please. But the thing is that you kind of you said something, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically that you didn't want to put anything out on social media that your kids, couldn't see or couldn't read, And it really struck
Hmm.
me as good advice for so many of us because I think a lot of times, like what we say, whether it's online or offline, we don't think about what if your child was standing next to you? Would you still say it that way? And
Ooh, that's
I think
great.
I just thought that was so amazing that you had thrown that piece of wisdom out there. You have parent or you're a parent. So what other tidbits of wisdom can you share in your experiences?
Okay, so yeah, that one right there was a big one because it happened when I first started doing comedy. I was just thinking to myself, I really want my kids to be able to know what I do. So even before I was a Christian or anything else, I just said to myself, my accountability was anything I ever say on stage or any movie I'm ever in, I want my kids to be able to come watch it and repeat it, whatever that thing is. So that still stands true. When my kids, and then one time I took my kids to a comedy club with me in Los Angeles. I was a single dad of three. I take my kids in there, and some big name comedians was on the show. Chris Rock was one of them. Seinfeld might have been there as well. And my kids came into the green room. I introduced everybody. Then I took them to a separate green room, and they went in there and ate some food. And then I remember Chris Rock sitting there. We were talking for a minute, and then he got this. He still started shaking his head, and he started thinking about his kids were younger than mine at the time, I believe. And he started thinking about how his kids at the time didn't know what he did, and he started processing what that conversation was going to look like when he had to have that conversation. So it was just it was a big moment for me to look at that and be like, wow, I never considered how hard to, because as a dad you want to teach your kids to not do and say and act in certain ways, and if you have a job that's causing you to do that, now how do you reconcile the two? So I've just never wanted to be in that position at all. So yeah, I think it's a good tool just to say, hey, what if my kids or my grandmother or my mom was here? Would I still post this? Would I still say this? Would I still act this way? There
Yeah.
should be a phrase for that. I think the phrase is man, somebody should write a phrase, maybe call it integrity or something. I don't know. Oh yeah, this already exists. Oh,
Hey,
yeah, there.
I like it.
Yeah.
Speaking of social media, Michael, we have a movie that came out a couple of years ago that you were in called Selfie Dad, and I just watched it. I
Yes.
just watched it a few months ago. I loved it. I got so many laughs out of it. But what I really loved about it was just this message. You kind of started out in the movie just. I'm not going to give it all away. Don't worry. But you started out in the movie just kind of doing things on your own, and then slowly your family became a part of it, and then Christ and God, a relationship, and your faith slowly enters too. And so what's
Hmm.
amazing is just kind of this transformation in you throughout the movie of recognizing what's important. It kind of goes back to what you're saying, I think, about the gaps, right? God, and then
Yeah.
family, and then job. Can you talk a little bit about that movie and maybe some of the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, that movie was really fun to do. It was the first movie where I starred in the actual role. Sophie that was so. Um, I was there was a few similarities between me and that dad. Um, but if you go back and watch the movie, one of my favorite things, and this is like a little Easter egg that and 20% of the people probably less would catch. There's a scene in the movie where I'm in the garage, and for those who don't know, the movie is about a dad who used to do stand up comedy, and now he's just stuck in a job that he doesn't like, and he wants to get back into comedy. So he posts a video and it blows up online. So now he's making these videos. And he's like a YouTube star. There's a scene in it when he's in the garage making a video, and and in this scene, while I'm talking straight to camera, there's a blue curtain behind me, and I'm looking at the camera, and I'm explaining a change that took place in the character's life, and I'm holding like a Bible in my hand. But there's a shift that takes place where you can see, if you look close enough, where you can see that I'm no longer the character in the movie, but I'm actually talking from Michael Jr.'s perspective. Like if you look, you'll see it because the things that I'm saying there are so true to my. If you happen to go back and watch that, you'll see it and be like, oh snap, there it was. I just saw the shift. And it's true because that thing really, like the Bible has changed everything for me. I didn't know anything about the Bible until I was 26 years old. I didn't even read one. I didn't pick one up. Christians were creepy. By the way, there are some creepy Christians out there. I just want to say that. And if you're listening right now, you don't know any creepy Christians, it's probably you. Just gonna throw that out there. It is you, all your friends in a one. Well, you're one friend. You probably just got one friend. So yes, that's a big deal. Another thing I want to express, I've talked about this I was in Idaho Falls this weekend or somewhere, I don't know. Because there's this thing, you know what, I'll let you ask another question and then I'll pivot to this answer instead of it coming out of nowhere. So,
Yeah, just kind of following up even further on that selfie dad thing is, you hit a point where you transitioned where the only thing that you really wanted to talk about or the main message you want to get across was your faith and the importance of your faith. And, how does that play out in your own journey? Because I mean, you're talking about being backstage with Chris Rock, with Seinfeld, pretty big names. But then there was a point where you hit and you're like, there's more than this. Can you talk a little bit about that transition point and recognizing that what you want to do is go out and serve the Lord no matter what the cost?
yeah. So the biggest desire really is, I mean, everybody is kind of chasing happiness and peace. Real peace comes from God, but even more than that, a lot of people try to get peace by changing their circumstances. If I had a different job, if I was able to make this much money, if my wife would just stop doing this, if the kids would act like this. But peace doesn't come from changing your circumstances. True peace comes from not allowing your circumstances to change you. So there's this process that I've been digging into that is just bananas. And it's this press in process that I don't want to say I coined the phrase because press in is their words and they were here before me. But the process looks like, so I was on stage the other day and I did some joke and I got some standing ovation. People went crazy. They're throwing money at me. I'm making some of this up anyway. So so I'm on stage and I explained this process on how life, and this is a guy, Peter Crone, wrote this. This is his quote, except for the last word. That life will bring you people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free yet, right? Life will bring you people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free yet. So even for some of your listeners who are struggling with porn or struggling in their marriage, whatever, life is just bringing you a circumstance to reveal where you're not free yet. So the thing to do is instead of pushing out, what you want to do is press in and find out what is that thing inside of you that is causing the turmoil, because it's rarely something on the outside of you. So here's an example. So I'll use the phrase, you think of a pet peeve that you have. Like just think of something that just bothers you. Like really, both of you do it right now. Like think of a pet peeve. You don't have to tell me what it is, but let me know when you got one.
I got one.
All right, cool. You got one too? All right, you're muted.
Yep.
All right.
Yep, I'm good.
So you got a pet peeve. So think about it. Like just think about it for about 5 or 6 seconds. Think about what that pet peeve is. And the listeners, you guys do it too. Like think about it. What is that thing that bothers you or some disagreement you're having with your spouse right now? Now, while you think about it, I want you to scan your body and tell me, where do you notice? Where do you feel the discomfort at? Did you guys find a spot where you felt it at? Where'd you feel it?
My chest.
You felt it in your chest. Where'd you feel yours?
Yeah, it was like in my throat,
In
actually.
your throat. I
Yeah.
know. So here's the thing. It actually says in James 4:1, it says, what causes the fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from the desires that battle within? So if you felt it in your throat and you felt it in your chest, why do we push out at other people, hoping that if they change, then we would feel better? The truth is those other people who are showing up in your life are actually helping you by saying, hey, there's something in your throat or there's something in your chest And God has sent me, they'll never say this because there's no way they know it, to help you recognize that that thing is there so you can be free of it. So as soon as you feel the negativity showing up in your life, you should get curious about what is this in me that needs to come out. It is so powerful. It flips everything else on its side because most people would never operate this way. Most people, what we'll do is we'll try to come up with a compromise. I say in marriage, because I know a lot of your listeners are married. In marriage, I know this is going to sound bad. People are not going to get it. They're going to be like, what is he talking about? I've been taught this my whole life. In marriage, you should not compromise. I know. We went
You're
too
gonna
deep.
have
I
to
should
dig
just do
into that
jokes.
one. Oh
I
yeah.
should just,
If
I should just
Christian's
do
falling
jokes.
out of their chair now.
Yeah, now it's not a good time to walk away. We need.
Right? Don't leave now. In fact, after this commercial break, we're going to tell you exactly what that means. No, I'm just kidding. So let me ask you this question. You guys can answer live for the listeners. Um, if a bridge was compromised, if a dress was compromised, would you wear it? So why would you compromise your marriage and then live in it? And the reason I say don't compromise, so let's say that Tom and Sheila are married. And let's say imagine a couple standing 10 feet from each other and they're facing each other. And the husband wants the wife to come to him. And the wife wants the husband to come to her. And they're both 10 feet away. What do people normally do? And they're arguing. You come to me, you come to me, you come to me. What do people normally do? By default, to settle the argument, they come together. They meet at 5 feet apart. Well, under this circumstance, who got what they wanted? Nobody. Who's happy? Nobody. So let's go ahead and take them both 10 feet apart again. So if this compromise didn't even make them happy, what was the point in doing it? Instead, what I recommend, and we talk about this in the Funny How Life Works, in the Funny How Marriage Works course, what I highly recommend you do is Tom has to say to himself, he has to look inside and say, why is it so, what is coming up in me that makes me want her to come closer to me? What is it in me that makes me have to have this certain time? Whatever the question is, like he just has to search, what is this in me? And as he digs into it, God will show him something in himself. But if he just prays, Lord, help me get a wife who listens, talk to her and fix her brain, and she's doing it, like he's just pushing out instead of pressing in. But if he presses in, he may see that when he was a kid, that his mom would always spend more time with his brother and never come towards him. And then he can express that to her. And then when he understands that's what he actually needed, now he has the freedom to do what? He has the freedom to go all the way to her. Or the fact that she's aware of that about him, what might she do? She'll come all the way to where he is.
Hmm.
And in this circumstance, while they're together, who's happy?
Both of
Both
them.
of them.
Both. Yeah.
Who got what they wanted? Who got what they really wanted? Both of them. Meaning she wanted that vulnerability anyway. So compromise works really well as a spare tire. It's an amazing spare tire, but it is not. It won't get you to the long journey. In fact, the ride will be bumpier because you got the donut on there. So you don't want to go too far with that. So I know I can't dig all the way into it right now, but for those who want to learn how to press in, I actually have a free video that I'll send your listeners that I actually show them the process on how to press in.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. And it is so unconventional. You don't hear that often, but you were so
No,
right.
nobody says don't compromise. So if your
Yeah.
listeners want that free video, they just go to michaeljr.com/press in, michaeljr.com/press in. And I'm going to send them a video and a PDF to walk them through the process. It's actually a really short process. So I did this in one of my shows, right? I said, so let's just press in right now. Let's find out. Let's do an example. Anybody here got a disagreement they're having with a spouse right now? And this dude raises his hand and says, I got one. I was like, dude, first of all, you need to check with your wife. Make sure you talk about this right now. So he goes ahead, he checks with his wife. She said, yeah. And they've been married for 18 years. And he says to me, Michael, my wife, every time she cleans the counter or the stove or anything, she always cleaning in circles. She wipes in circles like this. And he was like, you cannot clean in circles. You got to do straight lines because you're always going to miss a spot. Now, this sounds kind of frivolous, I think is a word, to us, but it was a serious thing for them. And if you're married, you know that little things like that can get to you. I said, so what do you normally do? He said, I try to tell her how to do it, but she keep on going in circles. I said, so you telling her to do it, how's that worked out? He said, it's been 18 years, Michael Jr. I said, so it's not working. I said, so you push it. And no. I said, so why don't we try pressing it in? And then he said, okay, how do I do that? I said, well, first of all, where did you learn that you have to clean in straight lines? And he was like, my grandmother told me. I was like, okay, so your grandmother taught you that. And did you get it right the first time? And he said, no. And you could hear his voice change when he said it. And his mannerisms change too. I said, what happened when you didn't get it right the first time? He said, let's just say that I had to get it right. I was like, okay. I said, how did you feel when you didn't get it right? And he's pressing in. We're doing the whole process. And he said, I felt inadequate. I said, oh. Now, how do you feel when your wife it cleans in circles? He said, I feel like she's inadequate. I said, no. How do you feel? And then he said, I feel inadequate. So I said, now think about that as a grown man right now. If your wife cleans circles, it means you're inadequate. And he laughed and the whole room laughed. Because what happened was when he was a kid, that made sense. Because the kids only got so many files that they can put stuff in. But as a grown man, when he said it out loud, his brain started to refile that in the right place, and it didn't even make sense anymore. Kid, it kept him safe. But then I said, so does it really make sense for you to, if she cleaned in circles, be inadequate? I said, in fact, if she cleaned in circles if she cleaned in straight lines, you'd be great, right? He said, yeah. I said, do you want to be a man where your wife has to clean in straight lines for you to feel good? Or would you rather be a man who loves your wife and feels great no matter what? He said, absolutely. I said, how do you feel right now? Imagine your wife cleaning in circles. How do you feel? See yourself sitting there, she cleaning in circles, and you smiling at her. How does that feel? He was like, it's amazing. I said, can that be a reality? He said, absolutely. Because now he's attaching some different feelings to his wife cleaning in circles. And here's the beautiful part. I don't know for sure, but I'm willing to bet that the next time he went home, his wife, without even trying, was no longer cleaning in circles because it was a blessing that she was in the first place so he could be free. Anyway, you guys really want to go and get
wow. That was so good.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. It's really fun, man. So go to michaeljr.com/press-in. They'll leave it in the show notes. I'm just making up stuff right now. I don't even know if
we will leave it in the show notes. You're not making that up.
It's dope. It's dope. So anyway, but in the midst of that, we're laughing. Like my comedy events that I'm doing all across the country, we're doing Funny How Marriage Works. We walk, but we do it with just funny and we're laughing. We're having a great time. We're interacting. It's a blast. So it's like a full-fledged comedy show with some great takeaways that you can apply to your life.
It sounds like a perfect date night. A little bit of fun and some growth, some healing, some learning. I love it. It's if you're a pastor or somebody in a church that's interested in booking you, are you still taking bookings or how do they get to you?
Yeah, great call. So what they can do is they can go to michaeljr.com. If they go to michaeljr.com and go to the book page, we can try to see if we can come and do a Funny How Marriage Works event at their place because my focus right now for sure this year and probably most of next year is going to be marriage. We want to help marriages, but in a new way. Like we want to show some people some new tools because not just tools, because we're using laughter with it, it gets further in your heart. Because when you laugh, your heart is open, which is a good thing if you're making a good deposit. But also, if you got to watch what you're laughing at, you got to watch what you're watching on TV, because if it's funny and then the content isn't helpful to you, that stuff will get in your heart just as well. So I would be super careful about what it is you guys are taking into your heart.
That's
Yeah,
super good
absolutely.
advice.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
which is
sure.
why we had you on today, Michael Jr., because we want to share your comedy because it's got such a heartfelt message and a deeper meaning. So thanks so
Mhm.
much for being on with us. Any last
Yeah.
thoughts that you would share with our listeners as we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that you guys can check out that doesn't cost you anything for the listeners, I just dropped my entire comedy special on YouTube because I did it right before the pandemic because people were afraid and they were running around and scared. So I put the whole comedy special on YouTube. It's called More Than Funny. So if you Google More Than Funny, this comedy special will show up and you get to watch it for free. You can watch it with your whole family. It's like 90, it's probably 70 minutes of comedy. And in the middle of it, we put some stories in the middle that are pretty doggone impactful. It kind of shakes people up in a really good way. So everybody can go check out More Than Funny. And then a takeaway I would say for everybody is be curious about yourself. What I mean is whether you're struggling from a porn or struggling in your marriage or just in your car and mad at traffic. Like, just be curious as opposed to just pushing out and saying, why is it? Let me ask you, first of all, why is it that you're the only person who knows how to drive? Like, is that a reality? Like, really? Or is there something else going on? Like, everybody is an idiot? Like, really? Is that possible? Or is it possible there's something going on with you? So, the next time you feel a little upset or mad or just get curious and ask yourself this question. Just say, hey, what is this? Ask God, say, what is this coming up in me? Like, what is this coming up in me? And then do this. And then when you get an answer, if it's anger, if it's fear, whatever it is, just write it down. And simply writing it down will take you from being in it to being over it. Meaning now you're aware of it. Now you can see it. Be like, oh, I feel angry right now. And it'll give you so much more power. And then just get curious about that anger. Be like, ooh, where does this come from? Like, just get curious. If you get curious, you're going to find some stuff that you probably have never seen before.
Hmm.
It's funny how life works. That's the name of my book, too, by the way. I just want to throw it out there.
Awesome.
Yeah,
No,
that's
thank
great.
you. That was really good wisdom. And just speaking from experience, I did watch your special and it's amazing. And I'm so grateful that it was online. However, the
Oh,
interruptions from YouTube commercials, like that was not great. You know, you really getting into it and
yeah.
then all of a sudden there's a Mountain Dew commercial. That was kind of frustrating. But
Yeah, yeah. The
I guess
paid
that's a
version is like $10. You really should upgrade your
I
YouTube. I'm just playing.
know. I know. I don't usually watch YouTube, so that was only your show that I
Yeah.
watched. So
Oh, thanks for watching it too. I really appreciate it. Did you the stories in the middle like that?
Oh my gosh. The one where
Yeah,
you went into was it Helping Hands where you went out into the am I
yeah.
yeah, that
We
was
went
oh
into the
my gosh, that
woods.
broke my heart. I was just like,
I
wow, what a
know.
great organization.
I
And then to
know. We
work
went
out
into the woods, and for those listening, we actually went into the woods and found homeless people who were living in the middle of trees, and we helped a few of them get out and find apartments, and we wrapped this story. There's a lady who was in the woods and she just got kicked out by the enforcement people. And as we're on our way in, she thinks we're coming to kick her out, like we're city enforcement. But we're actually with the Helping Hands crew, and then she collapses in the guy's arms and starts crying because she didn't know where she was going to go. And then we got her a place to live. I kept her dog for a few days because she was afraid to lose her dog. And we show this in the middle of stand-up comedy, and your emotions are just like, what am I doing? Like, see, like you all.
exactly. It's like a roller coaster, but it's so powerful and effective. I mean, oh my gosh. I actually watched it with my
Yeah.
whole family. So thank you
Oh,
for
that's
that.
so
That was
cool.
awesome.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. Thanks for watching.
I got it
And
on my
thanks for
list to
watching those
watch.
commercials. Thanks for watching those commercials too, because I'll get money for that. So that's
I'm too
awesome. I
cheap to
Nice.
appreciate
get the
that.
paid version. Sorry.
No. I get paid either way. You enjoy that Mountain Dew. Works for me.
Michael Jr., thanks so much for being on with us. We sure appreciate your time. For all of our listeners, you will be sure to include in the show notes all of the different things that he's talked about so that you can be sure to
Mhm.
check out all of it, and including a link to his special that's on YouTube, even though you got to, work through the commercials. It helps feed a black family in America, and that's really great, right?
That is awesome. Hey, for those who listening who think he might be insensitive, he's actually quoting one of my jokes. Okay, stop getting mad. Don't send him no letters. It was hysterical the way he said that just now. A little racist. Otherwise, I'm just playing. It's hilarious.
I
Awesome.
love it.
That was
Oh my
awesome. You
gosh.
guys are
Well,
great.
thank you
Thanks for
so
doing this.
much.
Thanks for what you guys do. This is significantly important. What you guys do. I just want y'all to like. It's really important, and the lives that you're changing by doing this, you won't even like you won't get that email. You won't get that letter. You'll get some. The ones that are the most impact. You probably won't even get those letters and that information. But I just want you to know you have an impact for real.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.